Sure, that sounds great. I'm looking for it. All right, Michael Sterneman.
Yep.
I got it. Let's see. Let me see. Okay, so video call link. We'll tap that. See what we got. And okay, I'm gonna come in and save it. Okay. Okay. it looked like it was going to it, and something just changed. I'm not sure.
Could you try just copy and pasting that link? See if that reacts better sometimes.
Sometimes that does that. Okay. Let's see. Order a meeting.
It's possible it could be a browser thing too, if you want to try using a different browser like Google Chrome, if you're not already using that.
Okay. Okay, let me try that. Let's see. Yeah, Google Chrome is what let's see. Open and browser. Yeah, it just seems like it doesn't want to. Let me try. Copy the link. Let me try it on my computer. No, I don't have any internet on that. Yeah, I guess we're just gonna have to go with the call because it's not acting right at all for some reason. Let's see. When I try to open it in, let's see. Yeah, it just doesn't.
All right, I'm going to see. I'm going to try this one more time. I'm going to send you a copy of this one this time.
Okay.
Get another one.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe that one will work.
Wes, in the meantime, do you want to introduce Haley?
Okay, got another one.
Wes, I think you might be frozen. Haley, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, where you're from?
Sure. So my name is Haley Shaw. I'm from Fort Worth originally. I went to undergrad in California, and then I went to Baylor for law school, and now I'm here working at a law firm in Tyler. So I'm new to East Texas.
Where'd you go to undergrad?
I went to Stanford.
Stanford. Okay, cool. My wife went to Cal Poly. She's from California.
Yeah, San Luis.
Actually, yeah, she loved it there and beautiful area. I'm actually in Newport Beach right now.
Oh, okay.
For a little meeting, and then I fly to Denver on Wednesday. But I make it to California a decent amount. I'm sure you try to make it back some too. Is your family still over in California?
No, I'm from Fort Worth. I'm from here.
Oh, Fort Worth. Okay, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but I have gone back. I go when I can.
Hey, but more importantly, I have a dog in the way. Sick 'em bears.
Exactly.
Well, welcome to the club, Haley. We meet, Wes might have already told you, but we meet 2 Tuesdays out of the month at 6 p.m. And we'll have a guest speaker once a week or once a month. Sorry, once a month we'll have a guest speaker join us. This week it's Cedrick Granberry. And Cedrick, we're excited to have you. But yeah, if you have any questions about the club, let us know. You've got your contact Wes there and Tyler that knows all about it, and he can tell you more.
Were y'all meeting virtually before COVID? Because if you're all in different places, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so we actually started, we chartered our club in 2020. So February of 2020 is when we chartered. And yes, the original plan was to be virtual.
Okay. So it just worked out in the sense that since
it did. Yeah, a lot of clubs had to pivot, but that was already our plan. So
right.
Here we are. Yeah, so we're all, we're just about 2 years into it. And, we do service projects as well each quarter. So we do, 4 to 5 service projects as a group per year. But yeah.
It's fun. We're at a fun stage with this club where we're kind of mold it in whatever we really want it to be. Rotary clubs have traditionally been a lot different than ours, and so it's been a unique experience to be able to kind of chart something new out, and essentially have a blank slate with a little guidance on what we want to do there. So, Cedrick, it looks like you got in.
Yeah, I'm using the office computer, and the connection that might drop at any moment. So I'm thinking I might should keep my phone connection too, just in case. But I think I'm in. Let's see.
Yeah, I agree, Cedrick. I would keep your audio on your phone and then just do video on that computer.
Right.
But we do see you.
Yeah, we can see you.
You can see me, but I can't see you guys. Wow.
Oh no.
Turn off camera. Yeah, technology is something else. Yeah. But as long as you guys can see me, I guess that's good.
Cool. Cedrick, any content that you need to share, like presenting wise?
No, I thought about that a little too late, and so no, not this go around. Hopefully, you guys will have me back one day. And
yeah,
we'll take it to the next level then.
Okay, good. No, we're open to always have people join us, whether that's for speaking or just hearing other people speak and hanging out in the club. So you're always welcome with us. No problem on the content stuff. We do these different every time, as we're kind of saying. It pivots a little bit each time. So
that's great.
Now that we're all kind of in there, we're gonna get a couple of announcements out of the way. So for Madeline, as she's not here, y'all should have received an email earlier today from her to launch our Q3 service project. This one's going to be a fun one because we have a little bit of an ability to choose what you want to do. So we're going to do a choose your own adventure service project. Specifically, what was the slogan we came up with earlier, guys? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank.
Spread the love.
Spread the love.
Spread the love.
So choose your own adventure and spread the love. So Matt has put together a nice little spreadsheet for us where we can collaborate on ideas and things that we're passionate about. We'd love to hear what you guys are passionate about. She put some suggestions in there already. And what the idea is, we can kind of build this list up, and whether it serves as the project that you're doing or a suggestion for somebody else, or it could even be something that a few of us join up together and do something in person together. So please check out that email. She created a link that you can just click on to bring you straight to that spreadsheet, and everything else is kind of explained in there as well. So we'll continue to build that up and talk about it every week, and remind y'all to get involved on that. So this is our first meeting of the month. So 2 weeks from now, we will have our third meeting, or our second meeting, third week of the month. And, we'll keep that in the same kind of format that we traditionally have. Right, Sarah? We don't have a speaker on that one, right?
Which meeting? Sorry.
This month, next one.
So no, yeah, we just have one speaker this month. We're actually going to go 2 meetings without a speaker. Our next speaker is on March 15th. And that is all lined out. That's going to be David Governator. He's going to speak on the life of an oil well, a discussion on drilling and completion and the ways fossil fuels affect our daily lives.
Cool. I didn't know he was joining us. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll look forward to that. So we'll just remember, y'all, we have 2 weeks. Join us again. Delane, did we just do the testing with us today, or did we do that testing out to the rest of the people?
That went to the entire club. So we have a group that I will send just to the board, but there's also one that is hello shirtless man in the background. We just got back from the gym. But yeah, so we have a group that we can send to everyone, and so hopefully, I think Wes, you might have been the only one that I had a landline instead of a mobile number, so I think you're the only one that didn't get it. But I think I've got your number updated now, so that should be good. Yeah, that's the one I've got now. So that's that we can use that going forward just as reminders, and another way of keeping in touch. You can actually reply to those if you ever have a question about a meeting or anything. I do actually get those replies. So
yeah, so we want to try to create a way so that we can engage with y'all more and just remind everybody what's going on with the group. I know everybody has that busy day and they get home from work and they completely forget that there was even a meeting. So we just want to try to get you guys reminders on that. We'll also have a couple WhatsApp groups that will be implemented in the next week here, so that we can keep open communication. If you guys have any suggestions, we plan to mainly have a leaders in service, and then we can also do breakout chat rooms if we have things that people are interested in, even if it's just, hey, let's create a chat room to post pictures of our pets. I mean, we can do things like that. So if there's anything that interests y'all, just so we can, have a little bit more of that personal touch, even though we're all talking and interacting from a distance, then let us know. Do we have any other announcements from the rest of y'all? All good?
Hey, I'll speak. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks everybody for the encouragement. My mother passed away 2 weeks ago. It was the ordeal that awaits all of us, all of you, if you haven't had that unhappy experience. And so I appreciate the flowers very much. They're sitting in the other room here, and I may try and move my computer so I can show you, but they're really lovely. Appreciate everything. It was she was a wonderful mom, and we should all be so fortunate to, go live the life she did and have the family she did. So hug your mom. Thank you.
Well, if we don't have any other announcements, Wes, I'll pass it over to you to introduce.
All right. Thank you. Let me go back over to this text. And all right. In 1956, the NAACP, and it was not a new organization, it had been fighting for civil rights for years. And African Americans were oppressed throughout the country, but especially in the South. And the Attorney General, the person who is a predecessor to Ken Paxton, who also uses his office to attack civil rights of people, the Attorney General was furious and wanted to shut down the NAACP and decided he would use the power of his office as the Attorney General of the state of Texas to sue the NAACP and shut it down, to get temporary injunctions to keep these people from voting, as he would say, keep them from interfering, these outsiders. We need voter security, election security. We don't need these troublemakers and these people protesting and trying to get on city buses. We need to shut all this down, and the NAACP is behind it all. So what did he do? He filed a lawsuit, and guess where he filed it? He thought, where is the most pro-white, anti-African-American, pro-Jim Crow place we can find in the state of Texas to file this lawsuit? And it was in Tyler, Texas. And so I've given you two links that give you some history of this. This town has a history to it, not some of it good, some of it not so good. And so the NAACP is a fighting organization. It is committed to the civil rights of everyone, not just African Americans by any means. I'm a member, and I'm not African American, and everyone is welcome. And it's for people who care about the civil rights of others and believe that everybody should be treated fairly. Everyone should have equal opportunity. Everyone should be graded according to their quality of their character, not their skin color, their ethnicity, their religion, their gender. Things that we would like to say can be taken for granted, but are not. So today is the current director of the Smith County NAACP in a very important position here in Smith County as the advocate for everyone, all of us. And Reverend Granberry, Mr. Granberry Sr., is married to his lovely wife, Angela, for 17 years. He's half of the marriage I have, 34 years, and he's at 17, so keep trying. And he's got 3 kids. I've got 5, so keep trying on that, okay? He's a church minister and ordained deacon. Okay, I have to live up to that. Okay, I'm not. He studied business administration at TJC. He's been an election judge since 2012 here in the good place of Smith County, president of NAACP Smith County since 2015. So going on 6 years now, 7 years. And I've been an active NAACP member at all levels since then. He's on the board of PATH, the Smith County ARB panel member, Christus Trinity Hospital Community and Leadership Board as a volunteer. And he's a very articulate man. He knows the history of Smith County. Ask him anything. Help him, let him help you understand what is important for all of us. So please give a warm Rotary welcome for our good friend and leader, Reverend Granberry.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was, thank you very much, Wes. I really appreciate the introduction. And thank you to your president, Mr. I want to say your name right, Michael. What's your last name? How do you pronounce your last name?
It's, oh, hold on, muted. It's Sterneman.
Sterneman.
Yep.
Okay, President, Mr. Sterneman, your president, for allowing me the opportunity to address you all today. Thank you so much for your warmness and what you do as an organization in leadership here in this area throughout East Texas. It sounds like you guys are connecting all over this country. So your representation speaks further than these boundaries here in this part of the country. So, but anyway, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. I've heard a lot about your organization. I have read a lot about your organization. I want to attend more meetings. I love to be engaged. Looks like I lost my video connection again, but we're gonna keep moving. Thank God for audio technology. The manual technology. It doesn't fail too often. So I know you can hear me. You might not can see me, but you can hear me. So again, I just thank you for the opportunity. Everything that was described in my short bio is accurate. I do currently continue to serve here in Tyler, Smith County as the local president of the NAACP, proudly married to my wife, who's from Nacogdoches, Texas, the oldest city in Texas. 3 children. I concur, and Wes, I would like to also say I'm very sorry about your mother. We'll continue to be praying for you. And as you know, I recently lost my father back in October, who was my hero and my best friend, one of my best friends, and I lost him. And so I've been reeling with that. He was also my pastor as well. So my mother and I and my wife, we own a business here in Tyler, business owners in Tyler for the last 22 years. You can Google us at 100 Grand, barbershop and clothing, alterations as well. So, but at the end of the day, I'm a servant. I'm a son of this city. I grew up in Tyler, went to school at, the elementaries and middle schools here at Ramey and Bolter. And I actually was a transfer student. I went to Bolter and had some issues there and was able to transfer under the DSEG order, which became very relevant here in the last few years because it was actually dropped. Federal oversight was dropped from the school districts here in East Texas, primarily Tyler, because after the Brown versus the Board of Education decision that was rendered to integrate schools, that desegregation and dual systems of education was unconstitutional, school districts had to integrate. And Tyler, unproudly speaking, as Wes said, we have some good history and some bad history, would not comply. And so the consent decree was instituted by Judge William Wayne Justice. And it's on the cusp of a lot because between 1954, 16 years later, the consent decree was put in place to force integration. So that's a problem in itself because forced integration, if you don't want to comply, then, you might have to, but you're not going to be on the square, so to speak, in complying. So I was a transfer student under that DSEG order, consent decree. And so I went to school at Robert E. Lee, which is now Legacy High School, thankfully, and transferred to John Tyler, which is now Tyler High, thankfully. And so I was able to experience something most of my neighborhood friends and people in my area were not able to experience, and that was being in a more diverse, integrated campus. And so I went from being in a classroom with mostly African American, Black, and maybe a few Caucasians, Anglo, white, to going to a culture shock and going to a campus which was actually the opposite. So it was just a few Blacks in the classroom, and so it was a unique challenge, but it was a good one because it allowed me to realize that diversity is very important. Equality is very important. And when you don't see that or realize that this is important, then you don't understand the dynamics of it until you are in a particular place. So that brings me up to the NAACP, and that's why I chose to hang my head here and serve. I'm the type of person, like I said, I'm a servant. I love to serve the people. I love people. I love all people. And but the helm of this organization, which is such a prestigious organization, chose me for a time such as this to lead. My predecessor, Mr. Ernest Deckard, served for 24 years in various capacities, who was a trailblazer here in East Texas, and he was my predecessor. And he told me, "You're going to lead this organization one day," when I was much younger. And there's a case I wanted to speak to, and I don't know, am I supposed to continue on talking, or do I need to pause? You guys just let me know.
You can pause for
You
questions.
just keep talking.
Yeah, you can keep going.
Preach it,
Okay,
preach it.
okay. Yeah, absolutely. Can I get an amen? Now, so, but Mr. Deckard, Mr. Andrew Mellentry, whom we also lost last year, in 2020, 2021 were very tumultuous years. We lost a lot of pioneers here in East Texas. But those two were people that Mr. Mellentry, Mr. Deckard poured into me as a young man because I had a desire to serve. And I wanted to speak to a situation that happened at the NAACP, was intricately engaged in, and that was, there's a book called Deliberate Indifference. Deliberate Indifference. And it talks, the book speaks to a lot of different situations that happened here in East Texas, and one primarily was the case of Lowell Garner Jr. Lowell Garner Jr. was in Deep East Texas, close to Shelby County, Tenehaw, Texas. And after getting off work, he was confronted by law enforcement back in, I guess this would have been in the early 80s. And he subsequently was beaten by law enforcement to the point where he was almost dead. And some kind of way, Mr. Garner's body and his care was, he wound up in Smith County. And here is where he expired and died. And so the NAACP was called in. We also lost Mr. Pearlie Henderson. He was also one of the presidents of the NAACP. But between Mr. Pearlie Henderson, Mr. Ernest Decker, and Mr. Andrew Mellentree, they understood what was actually taking place, and they were summoned by the family to the hospital where Mr. Garner was pronounced dead. And the law enforcement in Tenehaw, Texas knew the dynamics of this. And so they wanted to get Mr. Garner's body moved back to Shelby County. The NAACP knew what was going on, and these men basically hovered over Mr. Garner's body and said, there's no way this body is leaving Smith County. Because of the fact that they made sure Mr. Garner's body remained in Smith County, the case was tried in Smith County because the trial was tried in Smith County because he died here. And that served for equal justice. And so that's one of the good parts about Smith County. The dynamic is, it goes to each end of the spectrum as far as it can go. We have some ills, and we have some things to be very proud of. And that sheriff at the time was convicted of murder in Mr. Lowell Garner Jr.'s death. And it was because the NAACP and men understood, and women understood, women like several women that were intricately involved. I drew a blank as well, but the NAACP has been here and chartered in Tyler since 1946, which would have been well before Brown versus the Board of Education. And there have the case, the trial of the case with Tyler State Park, and how Tyler State Park, up until 1950, denied for Black people to even enter, not separate but equal, but denied Black people from entering in schools. School trips would go and would just sit outside and just let the children look at the park because they could not enter. And some men also, the NAACP said, this is wrong. We cannot allow this to happen. And Thurgood Marshall, which was he was one of the legal counsels for the NAACP at the time, the Legal Defense Fund, which we still have. He operated as one of the attorneys. If you've seen the movie Marshall, you will notice that plight. But he was summoned to Tyler to deal with that case, and ultimately the NAACP, speaking back to what West Attorney Boverding was speaking about, that was Astor Kirk, he was the Attorney General for Texas at the time, and this case in Tyler, Smith County, sent waves around the country, not only Texas. But Thurgood Marshall argued and had to be escorted out of town every night for fear of his life, and to come back every day. He drove back and forth from Dallas to Tyler to try the case every day, and ultimately that case was won because Mr. Marshall argued that you're violating your own law in denying entrance to a state-run public facility. And ultimately, it was rendered that Blacks could enter Tyler State Park, and ultimately it began a cascade of events in which the NAACP would be sued. And there's some more dynamics to that, but at the end of the day, again, going back even to 1919 and the birth of a nation, the NAACP, that D.W. Griffith's movie, Birth of a Nation, the silent film that depicted black men as savages, eating watermelon and chasing after Anglo women and just monsters. That was the NAACP protested the opening of that movie, which showed in the White House. And President Woodrow Wilson made a statement that the only regret he had was that this movie, that it was accurate, and that that history had been written with a lightning rod. I mean, and that resounded from the rooms, the halls of the White House. But the NAACP was there. Charles Hamilton Houston, the predecessor of Thurgood Marshall, who taught him a lot about law, who would ultimately, again, Mr. Marshall would ultimately become one of our first Black Supreme Court justice, which we know right now we're looking at possibly our first Black female Supreme Court justice. And so, what we do is a segue for things that will be done. Sometimes there are people that have fought and died and shed blood to say that I might not be able to see the change that I'm looking for, or that I need to see, or that I want to see, but someone will. And so now we ride on the coattail of that. We're blessed and fortunate, but what are we going to do now for those that perhaps will draw the benefit from our actions? Is my call to us all. We come off the cusp of George Floyd's death, Mr. George Floyd's death, protests here in Tyler last year for over 30 days on the square. And this is the same square that three Black men, Dan Davis, Jim Hodges, and but three Black men were dragged, burned, and dismembered. One of them was Robert Hilliard is his name. Jim Hodges, Robert Hilliard, and they were burned at the stake here in Tyler. Ugly history at the turn of the 20th century and 21st century, 20th century. But that is a dynamic, for a Black man to be burned at the stake and drugged and dismembered and hung on the square, and then there's protests that take place on last year, almost 100 years later, in protest of the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, even what we've seen with the McMichael father and son, the convictions. I mean, justice cries out. And the call of justice is what the NAACP shoulders, and we're privileged to witness change. Sometimes it's slow, sometimes it's stagnant, sometimes it doesn't happen, but we have to remain hopeful, and we have to remain aware of what has taken place prior to our lives. So, the least I could do is serve here in the NAACP, and as West Force stated, the NAACP was founded in 1909 in the birthplace of the 16th President Abraham Lincoln in Springfield, Illinois, by a multi-race group of people. 5 individuals of different backgrounds came together after the riots and lynchings were taking place in 1909 and said something has to change. And ultimately, the NAACP was founded. And now here we are, 113 years later. On February the 12th, we will celebrate Founders Day, which is the day that the NAACP was founded. So we're getting ready to celebrate 113 years, and that is monumental in itself. So I don't want to be redundant and just keep rhetorical and keep talking, but those are just some of the things. There's a long list of things that have taken place that we'll continue to fight for, initiatives in the school system, bullying, health disparities, and one primarily for me is the income, the wealth gap. Because if you've been deprived of a good foundation, you have trouble acclimating and moving forward. And if you look at the name NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, advancement has a dual context because it can mean move forward, of course, physically advance, but it also means perception and advancing how we are looked at as Black people, how we are, how we really are. And I believe, for me as a leader, that has been one of my main focuses with this organization, to make sure that our perception is changed, that we're not always confrontational. We can be if we need to be, but more or less, let's sit down at the table and let's talk about what our ills are and our problems are. Let's see if we can come to a resolution. And that usually does work. And there are some times that it doesn't. But at the end of the day, advancing perception is important. And that has been a focus of mine and in my administration here at the local chapter at NAACP. We've vast at about 500,000 members nationally, globally. We're located in, we were in Baltimore, Maryland. Now our home is in Washington, D.C. We're 6 regions throughout the United States, 7 regions, excuse me, and we're in the 6th region here in Texas, which is comprised of 5 states: Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico, and of course, Texas. And we have a state conference president, Mr. Gary Bledsoe, who is deemed as a super lawyer. He's a great individual, a great friend, and my mentor, one of my mentors. And then we have our local branch, the Tyler Smith County chapter, which Smith County is one of the largest counties in Texas at 59 square miles with roughly 10 school districts. And so we forge relationships with every superintendent that we can, every college, every institution of higher learning, every level of law enforcement, from the federal, the FBI to the sheriff's department, to the police department, the local government, the mayor, the city manager, the city attorney. So we cover a lot of areas, and there are 17 committees that operate in every branch. Tyler is one of the branches that it actually operates pretty well. We definitely have a lot of improvement, but I don't serve by myself. We have 2 vice presidents, Dr. Pam Phoenix and Mr. Joe Turner. We have 2 secretaries, Ms. Lisa Williams, who is also the president of Black Nurses Rock, and Mrs. Willie G. Mims is our assistant secretary. We have a treasurer, Mr. Jesse Crowder Jr. We have a board of directors, executive committee, excuse me, of dedicated people, and we don't get paid for any of this. It's all purely volunteer, and it is an honor. So I'll cut it off right there on just trying to give you a glimpse into what we do and what we stand for. And so I will take any questions, any comments, anything that you guys would like to ask me.
I'll just a comment. I think most, if not all, well, most of us, I think, are originally from East Texas. If we have since made our way elsewhere. But I mean, I grew up in Henderson. I went to Tyler regularly, very familiar with that square, and yet had no idea about some of the things that you're talking about. And these, you're right, it is kind of there's good and bad to the history, but I think it is really amazing to know that there are people who are, like we need to know those things. We need to know them so that we can learn from them. I really appreciate the work that it sounds like the that y'all are doing in East Texas. Because I mean, speaking as someone who's been there and has been in other places, I think it has some growing to do still.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that comment. And to speak to that, again, the protest that took place at the in protest of George Floyd's murder resounded across the world. And this was an opportunity. This was an epic moment in time because, there were several other black men that had been killed at the hands of police, unarmed black men that had been killed at the hands of police. Even one as young as 12 years old. His name is Tamir Rice. And when I got the news that the tragedy is not only a loss of human life, whomever it is, but the fact that when officers are acquitted of all wrongdoing, Tamir Rice was 12 years old. He was playing at the park. He had a BB gun, a toy gun, and the officers ride up on him, and in 2 seconds they shoot and kill him. And my son was 12 at the time. And when I got the news, all I could do was sit down and just try to gather myself because there's something called post-traumatic stress disorder. When you hear these types of things over and over, it does something to you. And so I wondered, why did George Floyd's death resound in time as it did? But I think that there were a lot of dynamics at play. Of course, COVID had hit, was ravaging society, and Breonna Taylor had been killed in her own apartment. Botham Jean had been killed in Dallas, eating some Bluebell ice cream in his own home. Tatiana Jefferson had been killed in her own home, black female in Fort Worth, Texas. And this was just happening over and over, not to mention Trayvon Martin's death back in 2012, and then the drawing contrast to Emmett Till's death in 1955, a 14-year-old being beaten severely and tortured, and then the white man being acquitted, and then selling their story to Time magazine, in which they confessed to what they did. These things this is America. Childish Gambino had a song, "This is America." And so last year, those protests really did something for me, because not only did I look over and see my brothers, black and white, black brothers, black sisters, I saw my white sisters or my white brothers, and my Asian brothers and my Asian sisters. Everyone was saying this is wrong. And I remember a climatic moment. We had a press conference there on the square, and this Caucasian white lady walked up to me with tears in her eyes, and she said, "Can I hug you?" And I said, "Well, ma'am, I guess so. We're in the Me Too. We're in the time of Me Too. So I have to be very careful." But I could tell she was genuine, and she hugged me and she said, "I'm sorry for everything that has transpired from my race to your race." And she said, "This is my son." He was about 7 or 8 years old. She said, "I want him to see that a black man is nothing to fear." That really, resonated with me, because look, change begins with each of us. And what's important is we're never going to reach the pinnacle of what America should be until we deal with the ills that we have had to endure, that our ancestors have had to have been a part of, and I think that's very important. And it goes for our race as African Americans. I mean, I don't condone Crips and Bloods, gang activity. If it's wrong, it's wrong. And to be able to say, "Well, I didn't participate in slavery, I didn't own slaves," no, that's an excuse. That's a scapegoat. That's a cop-out. Look, the effects of slavery, the effects of what America has benefited from is real. And so, but at the end of the day, I believe your name was Sarah. Is that Sarah that spoke? That is from Henderson?
It was Delane.
Okay, Delane?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Yeah, but thank you for that comment. And you're right. We it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. But we try to concentrate on the good in everybody and deal with the bad as it comes, and it certainly comes on a daily basis. So.
One of those articles that Wes shared, I just read a snippet of it, but it reminded me of being a junior historian in high school in Mineola, Texas. And a big part of doing that was we were involved in helping restore some of the cemeteries in town. And actually just in 2020, and this was actually brought to the table when I was in high school. So back in 2006 or 2007, there was a fence in between the white side of the cemetery and the black side of the cemetery. And sometimes I feel it's difficult as a white woman to really understand without hearing these stories. You know, without really hearing what's going on and hearing what's happening. Because if I hadn't been a part of that organization when I was in high school, I never would have known that. And hearing about that fence being taken down was kind of monumental. And, you know, it could be something so small in my mind, but something so much larger in somebody else's. So I really appreciate you sharing these. I feel like that was a big step, and it's kind of crazy to think how the small piece of land that we grew up on in East Texas was so divided.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, my great grandfather was a mulatto. When I first started becoming a freedom fighter, I had a problem with white people. When I started looking at all of the things that had transpired, it was tough, man. That's a lot of hatred to hang somebody. Dismember them, cut them up in pieces, drag them, and then James Byrd this was done to him in Jasper, Texas, just as recently as 20 years ago. This stuff is not went anywhere, but you have to understand the dynamics. And so I looked at my own family tree and realized that my great grandfather was half white. He was the son of a plantation owner, and he was dropped off in Panola County. And he married a black woman, and they had one child. And from that child, 49 children, 5 children were born, and 49 children came from those 49. And that one of those 5 was my great grandfather. And so, you can't hate yourself. I realized that there's white blood in me, and but you're right. East Texas is it's hard to believe, and it's not foreign to the rest of this country. But at the end of the day, we can't marginalize how we think. So when I look at the perpetrators of evil in society, I can't marginalize all white people and say, that that's the way that is. That's the same way as with any other race. And that's important. It sounds very naive to say, but it's very true. And society is shaped. We've seen in the last few years how society can be shaped in thinking with respect to the media and rhetoric, whether it's true or not. It doesn't matter. We're in a different time. And so conversations like this are so important. So I really appreciate it. It says, "Are you talking? Your mic is off. Click the mic to turn it on." Could you guys hear me? Because I still have my earpiece.
You're okay because it's using your phone.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're good.
Okay, good. Okay. But yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity. And, we welcome you all to join the NAACP. There's a lot of work to do.
Kind of piggybacking off that, because I know we're kind of coming up on time here. What are some, actions and steps that you would say that, we could take away of this, of ways that each of us can improve our own communities?
Mm-hmm. Well, you're doing it. You're doing it because you are a part of this group. Uh-oh, I'm getting an echo. So yeah, you're doing it. But as I told the young lady that asked me downtown, what can I do? it's when you're in those circles, and people say things that are not true. Don't be silent. Speak up, and say no, prove what you're saying. Don't just say things that we know are not true. That's a start. That's a very important start, because that is where opinion is shaped, where it cascades into a snowball, an avalanche effect of people doing and feeling like they can just say whatever they want to say, whether it's true or not. So that's one thing. But again, organizations such as the Rotary, your leadership, being visible, the NAACP as an organization welcomes anyone. The membership's at $30 a year to join, presence is everything. Paying attention is everything, and just dealing with the truth. But there is a litany of things that you can do in volunteering, and especially helping those that are disenfranchised. That's a huge part of society. Poverty, class warfare is a very important issue for us all to look at. Mental health, because the effects of all of what we went through it affects people in such a mental way that if you can just help one person, sometimes we try to reinvent the wheel and try to change the world, but if you can just help one person, I think that you are doing a huge service to society, to yourself, and definitely for that person.
I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, one thing that I think that is important to look at is, how do you guys feel about CRT, the critical race theory? And do you guys have any feedback on that? I'm curious to know, with it being such a hot button issue.
Don't we have a couple of teachers in here?
Okay.
I don't know if any of our teachers are still on. I work in higher education. I'm originally from Texarkana, but now I work in higher education administration at Texas A&M. And A&M College Station has its own unique history with respect to race relations, with respect to dealing with any kind of difference, really. And I mean, there are instructors that I speak with on a daily basis who have their syllabi scrutinized by our Board of Regents, who have to defend what it is that they're teaching in their classrooms, despite this idea of academic freedom. And at the same time, we're trying to develop a civil discourse, cultural discourse, and engagement requirement for all of our undergraduate students. And so when you have the right hand that wants to do one thing and the left hand that wants to do another, and they're at odds, it's an interesting environment to be in, for sure.
Yeah. Wow.
My wife is a high school French teacher, but she actually got started in teaching doing Teach for America in Tennessee. So she was just part of, some of the schools that they involved those teachers in, just outside of Nashville. And, some of the things she was able to teach and was part of her curriculum that she taught dealt with what would be considered, critical race theory these days, that she wouldn't be able to teach the same curriculum. But for her, that was a way to engage with a different demographic of students who needed a way to identify with material and their teachers and the environment and feel less, I guess, marginalized in that way. She's at a different school now, and she said that some of those lessons she wouldn't feel comfortable trying to teach these days, not because she's gotten there was any scrutiny over like critical race theory, but she's just afraid of how that might come across. Now, personally, as a guy who studied history and has a history degree, I think a critical race theory is just, I think it's just another way that people are using to censure history to make themselves more comfortable.
Right.
And that anytime that you feel like you have to censor history in any capacity, that should be where you should critically analyze like the motivation behind it. And I'm still not sure I understand what critical race theory actually is, but just the context that I've heard conversations around it. My wife's tried to explain it to me a couple of times. Was like, still not sure exactly what they're talking about, but it just sounds like censorship to me. And so it's kind of some of the things that I know that, you know, the teachers at her school are trying to work around as well, because it still ends up marginalizing students in one way or another.
Yeah. That's what I feel as well. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm kind of, I am not involved in the school system. I don't have children. So I've really only heard about it over the news. For me, I've really only heard, whether it's the news or somebody posting an article on social media, that's as much as I know about what it actually is. So it's hard for me to form an opinion about something that I don't feel educated on. There might have been a time or two where I attempted to educate myself, but Google is not a very good educator.
Yeah, get this book right here, 1619. Get that. That's what started it, because basically it's information, right? And it has become a political device to continue to divide us, as Andrew stated, and Elizabeth as well, to divide us, to confuse us, to keep us from knowing the truth. The only way we're going to heal is that we know the truth. And of course, 1619 is a very important year, because that's the year that at least 20 Africans arrived on American soil as slaves. So that date, that year, 1619, is what is, and that's the importance of that year. And critical race theory was actually only taught on a college level, right? It wasn't even taught in school. So if you begin to say things that people don't really understand, now all of a sudden, the uncomfortable nature, as you said, Andrew, what makes people feel uncomfortable, they tend to, back off from that, especially when you start talking about children and babies. And I just went to Henderson last week or 2 weeks ago and spoke to a pre-K group about Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday and his holiday for the second time. And these kids were so receptive to Dr. King. But again, critical race theory, Sarah, is basically it's a lesson in the African American diaspora here in America, and told from different perspectives in one collective that goes through the timeline of what African Americans have faced since arriving on this soil in 1619. And so, again, but the political nature, especially here in Texas, Senator Brian Hughes, I considered a friend. When I visit Austin, we would sit down and talk. But, these guys, man, I really wonder sometimes. I really, really do, because, the political aspect of it, is where it really boils down to dividing this country. I thought we were the United States of America. And I believe that we are the United States of America. And it's just a few people that make it hard on us all to understand how we should work together to make this place, to make this world better. That's the ultimate goal, to make things better than we found them, But I was just curious about your take on critical race theory and what you know about it. And I really appreciate the perspectives. It's my understanding that CRT is only taught at law schools. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but it has trickled down to a elementary level to where there's a problem. And now you're questioning books that are in libraries, right? Even here in Tyler, I've talked to a couple of school board members, and that's the hot button issue is books that are now in libraries, and we see Southwick Carroll, I believe it is, has made national news because it's the school board and the school, the parents are having an issue with books that perhaps that have lessons on the Holocaust. And if there's going to be one perspective, that should be another perspective. Look, history is history. Andrew, I'm sure you can attest to this. History is what it is. You know, you don't go back and rewrite how history has taken place. It's not interpretive. It's the fact of the matter. And so when you start talking about alternative facts, which we've heard politically, facts change and all of these things, all this rhetoric really is just dividing us and confusing us more than it should. And so, but I'm interested in that because that's something that we're dealing with at the NAACP. And there are, at September 1st, many laws were enacted here in Texas. And there was one primarily that I believe there is a counter to CRT and critical race theory with the 1843 project, I believe, that is teaching some aspects about Texas that is part of a more ugly history. So I just wanted to speak to that for a second. I don't want to go into too much detail because I'm not as versed on it, but I do know that it was a law drawn up that passed the House and the Senate, and that gives Segway as an alternative, basically, to CRT on a level of high school, elementary, and middle school. So, but it's 7:05. I don't. Yeah,
Mr. Granberry, we'll go all night. Really, we're happy.
Yeah.
All night.
Captivating.
Yeah.
It's a really good discussion.
Thank you very much. Now, I'll end things this. You've probably discovered a secret here, okay? You can't really be an NAACP member unless you have a certain style, okay? Now, you notice this incredible hat and this green jacket and this stunning bow tie.
Wow.
That
Don't do that.
You have to have style to be an NAACP member, okay? So remember that. If you're putting in your application, pay attention to that, okay? A cat will get you extra credit. I get that, okay? But that shows some style, okay? Thank you very much, Granberry.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it so much. Thank you all. Keep up the excellent work. I'll be joining meetings in the future. I will. I promise. Mr. Sterneman, thank you so much for your leadership. All of you guys are awesome. You know, in my book, you are the greatest. You are the salt of the earth. Please keep us in your prayers and keep up the good fight. You know, that's what's important.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you being here. This last part, Mr. Granberry, is what we do to end every meeting, and I think you'll like this. But this is the motto of Rotarians and how we present ourselves and what we believe. So everybody knows what to do. But what we'll do here, I dropped a little 4-part piece in the chat that we always read off here at the end. So I don't know if you can see that or not, but
yes, I can.
Come off mute. All right, and so this is a 4-way test of things that we think, say, and do as Rotarians. And number 1,
is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Is it fair to all?
Fair and
All
concerned.
concerned.
3,
Will it build
goodwill, better friendships?
and 4,
Will it be
Will it
beneficial?
be beneficial to all concerned?
we get better every time. Sometimes we have a hiccup in there. A little quick on 2, but thank you all for being here. I look forward to seeing you next week. Mr. Granberry, thank you especially for taking some time out of your day to spend some time with us. And to Haley, and I saw somebody else join in. Anna, thank you so much for joining our meeting today. Y'all are welcome at any point in time that you want to come in. We will always be here the first and the third week of the month. I'm having a hard time with that today. I don't know why. Maybe it's going to be meetings all day, but Thank you all so much for joining in, and y'all have a fantastic night.
Okay.
All
You
right.
too.
Adios.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.